Welcome back to another DC Breakdown. We're breaking down Campaign 3, Episode 4 of Critical Role. We got some heartfelt moments, some mystery and mechanics, and we're going to do a play-by-play of the moments that led up to what happened at the end there and see how you would handle it at your table. So I'm going to start things off, of course, talking about the number one biggest thing that was missing from it. We all know what I'm about to talk about. Freaking Travis, where's Travis? I was just waiting for him to come back. What class is he playing? What's going on? Never happened. I will say I do respect Matt that he did not ham-fisted force Travis's character to stumble across them right away, and then now he's back in because he felt like he had to. He's really respecting the story and the whole thing and letting it be a journey, letting it be a story of where are they going to find Travis' character? Who is Travis' character? Are they involved with where they're going? Oh, I don't know. Because I've had this happen at my table with one player wants to switch to a different character. You're introducing a character. Where do they come in? They got to find out. Travis really is an amazing D&D player, so I can't wait for him to come back. But speaking of amazing D&D players, Liam O'Brien, love this guy. First clip is starting off with him. This whole group, Bertrand Bell and his sacrifice of death that he experienced. He has brought this group together, and they mention that so many times in the first part of this little thing. They find and discover where he's at, and they discover the character's death, all that kind of stuff. And then Bertrand Bell's entire purpose was to take this group together, these three separate parts of groups, and bring them together. He did that. It worked. And now they get to kind of like meld with that. This moment for Liam is a great moment for a player to do for a dungeon master. A lot of the times the dungeon master has to give, plot and reasons to have to like make it feel like the players should be together. But it's so nice when your players do some of that work for you and they come up with their own reasons to talk with each other. They did that a little bit in episode 2 where they started talking about where their interests overlapped and overlie. Liam, Orem's player, is going to break this thing down and have a really beautiful moment of this description.
Orem has been silent the whole time on the other side of Bertram, mostly not wanting to speak out of turn and just listening and looking at Bertrand, and it's really subtle, but he's struck by the fact that 2 days ago, no one in this room knew each other. And he can feel them leaning on each other a little bit. And just notes it and tucks it away.
That's it. I know this is a real somber moment to start off these breakdowns with, but that moment, I wanted y'all to feel the weight of that moment. This is a player saying something like that. I know your groups, and there's different vibes at different groups, and they take it different levels of seriousness and humor and all stuff. But that moment, because they have plenty of humor in their games, this moment has some weight to it. He's looking around. It's a completely unnecessary moment. No one needs to say this. Most players would never even think to this. But for him to just give some exposition to his own thoughts to the group, it just makes everybody reflect, right? Now, this is all meta information. Nobody heard those thoughts from Orem thinking those things, but all the players at that table feel that, and they're going to reflect on their own characters of how are they feeling in some of these things, and it's going to just depthen everyone at the table. And props to Liam as the player, and players out there, do this at your table. When there's these big moments that happen, make sure that it's not just the dungeon master showing you all these reasons to be together as a group, and like embrace some of these moments and dive into it. So I just really love that. And I was like, Liam does this all the time. He's done it on all of his characters he has. Love it. All right, the next two things here, I don't actually need to show the clips for because they're pretty self-explanatory. There's a long rest moment where they've had this whole thing where they're looking around and it's late at night and they're looking for Bertrand, and then they find him and they bring him back, and it's this whole thing, and it's nighttime and then they need to rest, and they're like, oh, do we get a long rest, and all that kind of stuff, right? And if you've ever seen other episodes or at your own game table, sometimes there's those weird gray areas where like, did we actually get a long rest? Did we have the full 8 hours and blah, 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 all the technically, you know what I mean? And technically, maybe they didn't get a full 8 hours. That was a lot of activity they were doing. They had some partying that they were doing, and then this whole thing happened. So they might not have got, but this is the part. Matt hand waves the whole thing. He's like, yeah, no, between everything, you got a long rest. No problem. And I'm only highlighting this because this is just a perfect example of times where I just released a long rest video on the main channel. Where you want to be able to be in control of if you're trying to make this a big deal or not. If you're out and about traveling, or it's the night before something and then this happened and now they're not at their peak performance because they're getting ready to go, and you're trying to put some sort of tension on them and pressure from resting, and you're trying to make that become an element of the game, Sure, be more strict on it. Make them have to be smart and be creative about it. Don't let them get their stuff back. Oh, what are they gonna have to do? But that's not it. This is not the case. He hand waves the whole thing. No, yeah, you get your long rest. Everybody's fine. Everything's good. Because that wasn't the focus. The focus was what they went through, what they just went. That's not long resting and your cooldowns and your spells and whatever. That's not the focus. So sometimes in the situations where it's not the central focus point, hand wave. And speaking of things that have been hand waved, Mr. Fern's fire monkey pet, the thing that's baked into her class that has not made an appearance whatsoever. Mr. has been mentioned. He was a huge thing whenever Abria in Exandria Unlimited, she role-played Mr. all the time, and he has a whole personality. She weaved him into this whole thing, and Mr. was a very big part of this whole thing. Granted, there's less players. Granted, it was an 8-episode thing and everything, and that's different dungeon masters. I think it's really cool that now 2 dungeon masters have ran Mr., this little pet monkey of Fern's, and Abria ran it and Matt ran it, and they are a little different. I will say that they are, obviously you could say the same in different contexts or whatever, but it's now cool to see something had to have happened. And I would have loved to bring in these players on these breakdowns and be like, so Ashley, the person who plays Fern, did you talk to Matt about Mr. and like said that you wanted him to be more of a thing, or did Matt in his notes go through and like, man, I really haven't, because some part of my DM prep, one of the first things I do during my DM prep for different sessions is I go through each of my characters and I just glance over different part of their goals and things about what makes them, and just to put it in my mind so I'm thinking about my players, because you're making the game around and with them. So I wonder what happened to make Mr. come to the front, because there's multiple times, about 2 or 3 times in this episode, where Mr. does something and he just, like, Matt almost goes out of his way to make Mr. do something in this case. Overall, like I was talking about the long rest things, there's gonna be parts of the game that you hand wave and don't pay that much attention to, and other parts that you should. So at first, Mr. wasn't that big of a deal. Maybe somebody said something and now he's a little bit more of a deal, and I'm sure he'll fade into the background and come back and forth depending on what the focus of what they're doing is. So there's that. For the next clip, we're coming back to Orem. Maybe he's the MVP of this episode, but he had a really funny moment in this little delving expedition that they had. He had a coin with light cast on it on his forehead, and then they were trying to explore through this situation. He ended up dropping the coin down this long shaft, over 1,000 feet down, and the coin's lost. And it was a coin given him by fresh cut grass. So one character gave another character a coin, he lost it in a thing, and it was this whole funny exchange about like, did it mean something to you? Yeah, my dead master gave it to me and now it's gone, but it's fine, because Sam's character, fresh cut grass, this little automaton, is so nice, like over the top nice. I love seeing Sam play a character like this, but he's like, no, don't worry about it. And Orem playing the character, he is so guilty. So this is extremely awesome role play on these 2 parts of these 2 players. One's completely forgiving, one's completely, I feel so bad. And it was such a funny moment. He's like, I'll pay you money, it's gonna be fine. And then it ended up fading away into the background. And then literally 3 minutes later, they have some other exchange. They're talking about something entirely differently. Laudna's talking to fresh cut grass. Ashton chimes in, and then out of nowhere, Liam throws it back in. And then we'll talk about why I love this so much.
It was impressive.
Horrible.
Yeah.
I
Horrifying.
really think you should take the 200 gold. I mean, I feel terribly.
Buy things. It's fine.
But I thought you ate, like, it's metal, right? So
They're just gonna give it to me. It doesn't matter.
I will just give that
will
to
you
you.
hold this 200
Fuck
for
yeah.
them?
Will it make you feel better?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. All right.
Okay, win-win.
Well, what I was going to say was,
I love it because now Orem's just down 200 gold. For the sake of role play, I love it. The few times I ever get to be a player, these are the types of really cool things I'd love to spend gold on, because he spent 200 gold to solve a role-played emotional problem that he felt bad to another player, and he spent it on effectively nothing, instead of like, oh, I'm going to save up to buy this magic item. Like, I just think it's so awesome. I also think it's a great example to set whenever players can interchange money with each other and really truly show that bonds are being formed. Kind of like some of the themes of this episode of these players coming together, of this tone being set, of these bonds being made, and he feels so bad, and so he's going to give it, and these are more links and more connections made between players. Orem's character, Fresh Cut Grass, now have a little bond. To the next clip. Okay, apparently Orem is the MVP of this episode. Whenever I watch Critical Role, I make little notes of the different stuff I want to say during these breakdowns. So I don't necessarily plan them out like that. It's just the things that stand out to me as I'm watching this, as I'm sure you guys have these moments too. Leave them down in the comments. I'd love to have, in the future, Critical Role is going to have little gaps. And I would love to talk about some of the moments that you guys leave down in the comments and make little gap filler videos. There's a Halfling Luck moment, and Liam O'Brien, the player of Orem, has gone on record to say how much he loves Halfling Luck. His next player is going to be a Halfling. Sam's last character was a Halfling, and he didn't like to use the Halfling rerolls of ones. And for the record, I personally don't like the Halfling rerolls of ones. Just in the general, I don't like the lucky feat. That's a whole thing. I have other videos on the channel about it. I could do a whole rant video on that. But that's not what we're here to talk about, because this is an awesome moment that I think we can dive further into with this Halfling Luck situation. So what happens? Orem's up on a roof. He's going roof hopping. He's going around from roof to roof. Matt asks him to make a check for it. He rolls a natural 1. Oh, this would be terrible. But he's a Halfling. Halfling Luck, right? It's baked into the literal race of Halflings. And he re-rolls the d20 and gets a natural 20. So this moment is huge. This moment's huge. I'll let y'all play the clip and then we'll talk about it.
Oh, I said 1, but I'm a halfling. Oh. And it's a 20.
Big
Oh
moment.
my
love it.
God.
Like you can make the jump. This is more about the grace of the landing.
Yeah.
And this is full on, Captain America, like shield down, catch yourself on the opposite side and
more of
stand
a-
up. Fair enough.
This is Halfling Luck at its finest. There's a 1 in 400 chance of having a 1 go to a 20, right? So in this, my math teacher's showing, but with this Halfling description, I don't think that in this scenario, with the spirit of what Halfling Luck truly is, and like I said before, I don't like Halfling Luck, blah, blah, blah. But if I ever had a Halfling player that really truly felt like they wanted to do this and they really loved the whole vibe of what Halflings are and that whole lucky, they're just lucky, I would want to make sure to play that and pay respect to that whenever they are in this situation. So he's a Halfling, and this lucky thing was described as, and Matt's descriptions are next level, of course, but I think you could really embellish this in a certain way, and I have a little thing that I did for it, but it was described as a Captain America landing, right? There's no Halfling Luck flavor there. So again, disclaimer, as with all of these things I do in this video, I'm not trying to say that I'm the best at describing and how this is the way it should have been done. I think this is the type of thing that I would love to do if I had a Halfling at my table. Here we go. Natural 1 to a natural 20. Okay, you're going from rooftop to rooftop. You land on top of the roof, the part of the shingles, those little different plates of shingles. You land on 2 of them, they dislodge, and you start sliding down. It's not looking good. You are skiing down this roof, off balance, unstable, but right before you get to the edge, you gather yourself and leap off. One of your feet slip as you corkscrew through the air, legs spinning, and then land with one knee, Captain America style, shield out to the side. So there's my thoughts on what a natural 1 Halfling to a natural 20 moment would be, because yes, it should be epic, but I feel like the Halfling vibe of what even Liam's expressed, joy of the whole cool parts of Halflings, and they're just so lucky. I feel like there should be a little bit of flavor in there for the Halflings, but I'm still standing next to that. I don't like that Halfling feature or the lucky feat, but that's a whole nother conversation. You can talk to about it down in the comments. This next breakdown doesn't really need a clip for it, but they're going around different parts of town. They're asking about who they know and do I know this person or does this person know me? They're asking questions about their own backstories, and as the Dungeon Master, you know the most, you know the whole world, all that stuff, right? But as the Dungeon Master, I might start this whole thing off if there's ever questions about if I know somebody or do they know me, whatever. I'd ask the player, like, is this person a part of your backstory? And they would know, and that, especially if it hasn't been established yet, or if it's in that little gray areas in backstories, because a lot of times the backstory kind of develops itself as you play, which is totally fine. So I'd ask the player, give them creative control over their own backstory. And if they're like, I don't really know, like, and we have this moment, right? What I do here immediately is I say, make a charisma check. So they roll a flat d20 and add their charisma modifier, and that is the relationship that they have with that person and their backstory. Maybe they've resented them a little bit this whole time. Maybe they actually truly like them. And this has been funny before whenever players don't really know and they're like, I think that this person had a crush on me or whatever. And then they roll and it's real bad and they just completely misread that entire relationship, and so it's this like funny moment. So a lot of times, again, let the dice help you with the story and fill in these gaps like we've talked about in previous episodes. So there's a gap of if they don't know it or not, roll a charisma check, see what's going on. And in the case of Ashton's character, Talison's barbarian, probably wouldn't be the best, so it also fits in line with their character and their stat. All right, now this is a big one, and technically I've never done a breakdown point after the filming is over. Technically this is after the episode's ended, so this clip I'm about to show you is as he's saying that's where we're going to end for tonight. And we're going to keep on going a little further because there's some times and there's some stuff about this game that we all love to play that happen outside of the session windows of when we start the game and when we end the game. And there's some really interesting stuff to go on here. The only thing you need to know to set up is at the end, the last like half hour or so, the players meet this person called the Shadow Baker, an amazing NPC. I love, he's so serious about baking and all this kind of stuff. So it's this evil like Thieves Guild type vibe Shadow Baker person. This is a contact met up from Ashton, Talison's character, and they have an interaction with this person, right? And as I'm watching it, nothing's standing out. It's this, and if anything, it's a Shadow Baker, and it's like funny that he's so obsessed with these baked goods. It's almost disarming in a way, which is beautiful, and we'll talk about that too. How I was disarmed. I was like, this guy's not too bad. This is cool. Okay, cool. What's the mission they're going on? Okay, cool. My guard was lowered, and then turns out they are led into an ambush, and the whole thing was a trap, and the Shadow Baker led them to an ambush, and then he screwed him over. He sent him up the creek or whatever they say. So this all happened, and it was revealed at the very end of the episode that they are surrounded. I can't wait to break down this combat. Get ready for that. But there's some interesting things that happened as to how they ended up there. Did they deserve to be ended up there? What things caused them to lead them into this ambush type situation? What choices could they have made differently? The biggest thing I want you to focus on before I play the clip is Laura's reaction and response in almost like a debative type way, in a healthy player to DM type way, of concerns about how this whole thing went down, and just, I don't know. You'll see.
This, friends, is certainly not your luckiest of days. And that's where we're going to go ahead.
Damn pie fucker. Fucking pie fucker.
He sent us up to Greg.
Are we in the Court of Owls right now?
This is very Court of Owls.
The low persuasion check plus the mind probing.
Did not go well.
That could have gone one of multiple ways, and that put him in a
I didn't probe his mind.
Well, you know what I mean.
This is Laura.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just tickled his gooch. That's all.
Fuck. Shit. Piss.
You're the right height.
I would comment on what they were saying out loud.
Yeah.
30.
30 people. It looks like it. Yeah. Starting in the room.
So how did he?
Go.
Boy.
I only did that after he already gave us the information.
It's me.
Shit.
That
In a general rule, I probably should point at people and then other people should talk to them.
it's a shame
I
because
feel that, buddy.
that coin that I had paralyzes up to 30 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's the coin coming back up again. I love it. I can't wait for that to be a recurring bit. But there's a couple of things to break down here. Whenever you surprise your players, or as a dungeon master, you get one up on them, you screw them over, the whatever, you get them, right? You want it to feel fair. And in this moment, and why I highlight this clip, is I don't feel like Laura thinks that it's fair. Like she has this, and we've had this happen before, whenever dungeon masters make a call of some kind, and they, whether it's a rule mechanic or whatever's happening, a dice interpretation, a DC being set, whatever. And in general, it's, you wouldn't want, as a player, you don't want to be constantly debating with your dungeon master and some sort of like back and forth arguing all the time. You usually just go along with the flow. But it is a two-way street. If I want to, as a dungeon master, have my players agree with, feel fair. The key word here is fair. I want it to feel fair whenever something like this happens. And I don't think Laura in that moment felt that it was fair. She had a great point that she made, and it made me question and go back like, oh, wait a second. That's true. Like, because now I was, like I said, I was disarmed by the Shadow Baker. I thought he was a swell dude, and I got duped just like all of them did. And then she's like, but I did all that mind probing after he already told us where to go. So he said, go here. Then she did mind probing stuff. So does that make sense? Like, what? did they have control over it? Were they always going to get ambushed? Now that starts to, if you can't see behind the curtain, it starts to make you question what's going on behind the curtain. Where no matter what we did, we were going to get led into an ambush, so that nothing that really matters. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not going to lie. My initial thoughts was, I don't feel like this is fair. Then, if some of the stuff that he did, he said Matt's defense of his own stuff was, you had a really low persuasion roll and they had the mind probing going on. But technically, the mind probing wouldn't have happened if he made the choice to send them to an ambush and then this happened. I was like, okay, well, maybe he sent them to a location, but then as soon as he started doing the mind probing stuff, he's like, no, ambush him there. And then he sent a crew to go ambush him. I started to think about all this different stuff, but it's just, it didn't sit well with me to have some big, huge ambush attack happen. And if that's what the story is going to be, some people I'm sure will say like, oh, well, that's a certain story and that's the way they're going, so that's just what's going to happen. But I always want my players to feel like their choices lead to their actions. And because they interacted with this in this certain way, all of these ramifications and repercussions and consequences happen. And this also brings up, how much weight does one persuasion check hold? If one persuasion check causes this extreme and they're led into an ambush, does that feel fair? And as Taliesin said, or Ashton, so next time somebody I'm going to talk and somebody else talk for me because he has such a low persuasion. Now, of course, that's meta and all that kind of stuff. And this is part of Taliesin's backstory. So I for sure would have the check come from Taliesin because this is his character's backstory and all the players are getting pulled into this character's backstory. Is it fair for them to have to deal with the problems of yes. Now they're playing together, and this is all part of that cool stuff that I've kind of talked about this whole episode of the players coming together. Part of that is going to be them sharing in some problems that they have from their past or backstories or whatever. So this one persuasion check, how important was it? So I'm bringing in Matt Mercer on a call right now. We got him pulled up here. I'm just kidding, but that would be crazy. I would love to talk about what scenarios, what could have possibly happened. That's the thing that we don't know. So that's all the questions that I have. What do you guys think about that? And I'm going to break down some other things here, but this is where I like to send it to you guys. What would you do at your table? What bar would you set with the DC? And now he has like a -2 or 3 to charisma or whatever. What bar would you set for things to not be ambushed? Is there even a scenario? Would it have to be like a 15 or higher and he has to roll super crazy to have this not happen? Is this part of the whole challenges that you're setting up for them as a dungeon master? So maybe the roll doesn't matter, but then that feels bad. So I don't know how you would run at your table. I'd love to see some stuff down in the comments, but let's break some of this stuff down now. Talked around a bunch of people in my community and went back and watched it myself for a timeline of what happened leading up to this point. I felt a lot better after watching this. So here's the full-blown timeline right now. So before the ambush, they meet the Shadow Baker. They're talking with the Shadow Baker. Everything's going great. Everything's going super great. First bad thing that happened. Fern goes and picks his pockets and takes something from him and one of his sweets, and she's eating it. It ends up being a funny whole thing. But again, I was disarmed by the humor of it. And the Shadow Baker's reaction to that was kind of above board and very neutral, or kind of went along with it in some way. She ended up rolling decently well for it and everything. So that is one strike against the Shadow Baker. Next up, Orem asks for pie, which apparently is the sin. You know what I'm saying? Now, as a dungeon master, time out, get in Matt Mercer's head, right? As you are role playing this bad guy who you want to ambush the party with. That's probably what I'd be doing. I want to ambush these people. I'm looking for reasons as I'm role playing this Shadow Baker. I'm looking for reasons to try and bring these people down, right? He says pies. You could, like, I see a scenario where this Shadow Baker baking pies. That makes sense. He could totally bake some pies, but in the mindset of a dungeon master who's trying to, you know what I'm saying? This is me. I'm just saying, this is what I'm guessing on this one, right? Tell me if I'm wrong, Matt. But I'm looking for reasons to come after these people. And he says pie. How dare you say pie? Get this people. This is ridiculous. This is like a Wagyu steak and you're asking for ketchup, right? That's another quote from one of my friends. So this is a slap in his face, right? And Matt played it up to really be a slap in his face. And now things are starting to make more sense why this guy's not really liking these people. Then Ashton rolls a 6 for persuasion. I mean, the big step back, it totally checks out, totally makes sense. And then Imogen starts probing his mind, and he really didn't like that. So the big picture, yeah, they all screwed up. And this whole thing's been led into this big moment. And this is now bringing us back to the clip that I just showed you. When Matt is talking to all of them, I think these are some moments where, I don't want you to feel like you have to defend yourself as a dungeon master, but I might have let them see that and make them feel responsible for it. I would have probably had, and maybe I would have realized it later, because there's so much going on in the moment, you might not have thought about it. I would have maybe sent them a group text later, or I have a video message I send with my group, or next time in person when you do your recaps as a dungeon master. When you do your recaps, sometimes you can reframe things so that kind of really it makes sense to the players and that feels good. So he could say all of those things that I just said to be like, yeah, oof, we really did put ourselves in this situation, right? And then they can own it. So for myself as a dungeon master, how much goes into a roll, all that kind of stuff, one roll to rule them all, right? I would have had this persuasion check be a very big deal, but I would have had it happen later on in the interactions, let them interact, and that number, that DC in my head would be floating around. You know what I'm saying? It might be sitting at a 15, like, yeah, he's gonna have to really impress me. And then it gets to the point where with all these interactions, saying pie, you might have had to roll in that 20. And that feels fine to me, because it's their actions are making it worse and worse and worse. You know what I'm saying? And if I'm looking for things, I'm not trying to force them into this ambush. I'd look for interesting moments, or maybe I'd ask for other checks to kind of feel out, kind of like, you know, they had other checks that they made during that interaction. It wasn't all on Ashton's one roll, but I really love this thing. I love breaking it down. This is why I love these videos, breaking it down with you guys. I'd love to see what your thoughts are in this situation down in the comments, how you'd handle things like this. But we're going to be picking up next time, episode 5, and some crazy combat. Get ready, buckle up, think outside the box. See you next time. Peace.